The interview started with, I'm kind, I'm nice, I'm smart, da 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 da, and then ripped me to shreds. It was this amazing voice that rose within me that said, it's your time to lead. And so I always said to myself, as a street fighter, I need to be the first, the second, and the third, because no one is ever going to beat me at my own game. Men and women have imposter syndrome. Men just ignore the voice and women let that voice get louder.
I don't let myself get frustrated with these individuals because I honestly think that they have cut themselves short of their opportunity in the world if this is the way they behave.
How much risk am I willing to take? Because no risk, no reward. And if I didn't do it, I'd have regret. And I have a no regret policy.
Welcome to More to Say. I'm Amber Vinsbach, founder of the $2 billion creator commerce platform, LTK. I've spent the last 14 years pioneering the creator economy, and on this podcast, I'm giving you direct access to the knowledge and perspectives of some of today's most influential people. I want you to stay ahead of the curve, so pull up a seat, because we are just getting started. Well, it's worth noting that my professional experience prior to LTK was in really small work environments. And in those environments, my age and my experience and really my regional context, not as much of my gender, were actually the limiting factors. And then, of course, at LTK, we're female founded and the vast majority of our clients are female. At our core, we're female led. And I'm grateful to have been treated as an equal from our founding through today, mainly by Baxter, our CEO and co-founder, who really has set the tone when it comes to the male energy in the office among our male investors, our board members, and then just others as far as the way that I'm treated in the rooms that I'm walked into with him. We have made mishires, though. Of course, I think anyone in business will tell you that. I can think of one in particular who was highly resistant to female leadership, and that person is no longer at LTK. But my experience at LTK is just that we really have zero tolerance for this behavior, especially now that I've experienced it and know what to look for. That said, I've been in other rooms and other contexts where I'm clearly not an equal or am deeply underestimated for any number of reasons. It could be, again, cultural, it could be my age, it could be experience, it could be my network, or just the perception that I wouldn't have something relevant to bring to the table. So sometimes I find that people just have never maybe met a female who operates with the confidence of a peer. But whatever the situation, we know that this exists. And it's not just for women, but for people for other various reasons. And so I am so honored that Shelley agreed to come on to More to Say to kind of share her experience with us. Shelley is an incredible person for many reasons. I get so many questions about women in leadership and navigating spaces where you feel like you're an outsider. And I have some of those answers, but Shelley is so much better equipped to coach us. And so I really wanted to bring her in today as a mentor. She's a rock star founder all her own. So she sold her last company for $80 million, has reached scale at this new business that many of us really would only dream to achieve. And her business now is focused on social change, which is a very different type of business maybe than her previous one. She has so much wisdom to share with us and so much context from the relationships with leaders around the world that she both is friends with and has a business relationship with. She has worked with some of the largest companies that we all use every day, really on a global scale. So Shelley, welcome to More to Say.
Wow, you have so much to say. And so I loved the context of how you set this conversation up. And I was sitting here, I don't know if I was on camera or not, but smiling the whole time because so many things that you have said have resonated in so many ways, or that I've watched happen to others, or I've experienced. And I think the best advice does not come from a textbook. It comes from people who have been there, done that. And, it's that lived experience, which is wisdom. And I have a lot of it, turning 63 years old. So I've been around the block a number of times. And I think it's the whole reason I started the Female Quotient was for people just like you. And so it gave me shivers listening to you open the conversation up.
Well, I'm so excited for everything that you have to share. You have so much enthusiasm, and that's what struck me when I first met you was just like the energy and passion around this topic, which I love to talk to people who are just savants in a space. I mentioned that you have had a whole life before Female Quotient as well. What would you say were kind of those pivotal moments that led you to this mission and this next business?
Hmm. You call them pivotal moments. I call them heartbeat moments. And you have your head that is the cognitive that could rationalize and justify and talk you in or out of a decision. And then there's the heart or the emotive side, the emotional side, where your heart doesn't lie. Ba boom, ba boom, ba boom. You got to follow your heart. And it's where I've really understood what follow your heart means, or how I now rephrased it to heartbeat moments. So I've had several heartbeat moments that have been transformative for me. Started way back when in my first interview, my first review when I was working in a market research company. And I thought I was the perfect employee. I came in early, I stayed late, I said yes, I helped, I was a great team player, I was smart, all these things. And I go to my first review, and we had typewriters at the time, and it was I'm trying to not exaggerate, but maybe 4 to 6 pages. And, typewritten letters are small, 4 to 6 pages. And I sit down with my boss, a man, and who I had a great relationship with. And the interview started with, I'm kind, I'm nice, I'm smart, da, 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 da. And then the rest ripped me to shreds of things that I did wrong. And basically everything I did wrong was break patterns, break the rules. I was in business development, and to me, clients came first. And what clients wanted, the answer was yes. And then you go back to the team and get them to deliver to your clients' needs. But in my review, I was wrong. I took too many clients to lunch. Like, I didn't need a free lunch, but that's how relationships, I was all about relationships, not about a phone call and being an order taker. But that I was wrong. And I was told, you take too many lunches and you spend too much time with clients, and you're pushing our team out of their comfort zone. And, you've got to follow these rules and this. And I'm like, and they wanted me to sign the review to agree. And I looked at my boss, my head said, sign, I need this job. I was 25 years old or something. I needed the job and I needed the money. It really disturbed me because my head said sign. My heart said, I'm not going to sign something I don't agree with, even though I'm junior and bosses are always right. Why? And so I looked at him and I said, I'm not signing that review. I disagree with you. And this should be about relationships. And I said, I know what people eat for lunch. I know how many kids they have. I know when they go to the supermarket. I know what they buy in the market. I know when it's their birthday. People do business with people they like and trust, not with companies. And I wasn't going to agree. And so I didn't sign, and I got demoted. And he put a woman above me and he said, we're a research company and she's a researcher. What don't you get? And that was the first moment, heartbeat moment for me. The second was when I stayed at that company. My husband was a resident in medicine, so we needed the job. He barely made any money. I barely made any money. And the second heartbeat moment was when I had the idea to pioneer online research, to move research from mall intercept and telephone to online. And I went to my boss and my boss's boss and my boss's boss, men, all the way up the ladder. And I said, I think it's time to consider online. And they said, it's too early. There's no one online, which is true. Only wealthy old men with broadband connections were really using the internet at the time. This was maybe in 1998. And we were all on 14.4 modems. And I said, well, I think it's the right time. And I was on a panel with the chief research officer of Procter & Gamble. Larry Mock was his name. And my bosses were all in the front row watching this conversation. And I'm whispering. Larry and I are whispering. I come off the stage and my bosses all said, what did you talk to him about? What did you whisper about? Because Procter was one of our largest clients. I said, I just asked him, when is the right time to come to Procter & Gamble to talk about migrating research from offline to online? And my bosses said, well, what did he say? What did he say? I said, he said, come next week. And my boss said, great, Paul will go, Peter will go, John will go, and Ringo will go. And I said, but what about Shelley? I got the meeting. And they said, but, Proctor is a real boys club, blah, blah, blah. And this is the right team. I said, well, if I'm not going, I'm going to cancel the meeting and you can all wait for the right time. And that was my, I don't want to say my powerful moment or my empowering moment. I got rid of the word empower. You wait and watch to empower, and we'll talk about that. But it was this amazing voice that rose within me that said, it's your time to lead. Like, I'd rather be in charge. And Charlotte Beers, a very dear friend of mine who's a legend in the agency business, wrote a book called I'd Rather Be in Charge. I understood that in that moment. I'd rather be in charge. Why am I waiting for permission from everyone to tell me what's right, what's wrong, when the right time is, when the wrong time is? And that's when I started OTX, Online Testing Exchange, and decided I'm going to follow my heart. I didn't have the money to do it. I needed $1 million, which is a whole other story. I don't know how long you want to go, but I'll pause for a minute. And that was a game-changing moment for me. And from that moment on, I was the boss and started my own company.
Well, I always think of the context of the period of both, what what experiences you had under your belt that equipped you for that moment. And then also the changes in technology that made things available. Because certainly, speaking from LTK, we started this business when word blog wasn't even in the dictionary. And of course, online retailing had not really even taken off yet. And there's a moment in time that I think that you're able to then ride tailwinds and also just like paddle really fast. And so you're kind of like getting that double momentum here. And so what were like the tailwinds of the time for you?
It was actually quite funny because I had this crazy idea to go online when nobody was online. So, in market research, you need a representative population, but there was none. I had a young guy, his name was Trevor Kaufman, that was doing website testing for me in my days at ASI, the company I left. I was doing website testing and standardizing new formats and things like that. And he was helping me with that. And I called him up one day and I said, Trevor, will you build me this sample survey, online survey business? It's basically a website to receive information. And I will give you $1 million to do this for me. I don't have it right now. I have nothing. But if you build it, and one day, if I have an investor of some sort, I will pay you $1 million for the work you did. He was 21 years old at the time. And we sat in my basement and we built this whole idea in my head into a website, which was called OTX, Online Testing Exchange. Very simple. I love X's, by the way. I think they're sexy. And so it was that. And then, I brought the business to Nielsen. And they didn't have anything like this. And they said, well, what do you need? I said, I need $1 million to give to this guy, Trevor. And so that was how my whole business kind of happened.
That is an incredible story. I have so many questions about, giving that level of funding or promising it to early team members. It's honestly quite savvy and compelling for Trevor. Maybe that's another episode though. What happened during that period that when it was over, you said, I have to launch Female Quotient? January has been such a rowdy month for social media and updates in the creator economy. Of course, we all were anticipating the TikTok ban that ultimately did take place for about 12 hours on January 18th overnight and leading into the 19th, kind of as expected as the Supreme Court upheld kind of that ban or divest order. The Trump administration, as we know, then came in and filed for an extension that they want a couple months to be able to find a buyer ultimately for the TikTok platform. Of course, ByteDance, who's the owner of TikTok, has signaled that they are not interested in a divestiture at all. It's actually illegal in China to sell algorithms. So if the asset was to be sold, it would not be with the algorithm that exists today. So there's still a lot of uncertainty as to what's going to happen on that platform specifically. Of course, in the meantime, you saw Instagram announce that they're going to be launching all of these new features that really aim to, I think, attract users from TikTok. They announced paying TikTokers, but on the consumer side, they announced a suite of things that are not yet released that essentially try to fill the gap that TikTok's going to leave. I think Elon Musk announced that he might resurrect Vine. Tumblr showed up to the party. They announced that they've been working on like a TikTok-like product that they're going to try and fill that void. I mean, the news has really totally been endless. I think there's like a big thematic thing when it comes to anyone doing business on these platforms, which they're largely used, for marketing, whether you're a creator or you're a retailer or even a hospitality property, like any type of a business is using these as really historically a low cost way to reach their customers. What we saw over 2024 was that the social media platforms truly shifted from being a community or people-based platform into an entertainment platform. So the vast majority of the content you see on every platform now is recommended content to you. It's not content that you've opted in to follow. What that means for businesses and for creators specifically is really that these are not platforms for them to house their community anymore, because they're not engineered in a way for you to reach a person who's opted in to following you. So that functionality has now totally moved away. That's why we see creators really, especially by the end of Q4, realizing that on TikTok, but seeing the broader landscape shift, have started moving their communities into platforms that are dedicated to retaining, nurturing, and growing that community while still reaching their audiences, of course, through social media and entertainment channels like that. We saw that on the, during the TikTok ban, that we had a 78% bump in app downloads during that period as people sought to really continue the relationship with their favorite creators that they had maybe only followed on TikTok, and they wanted to continue to have a relationship with them. It's become culturally normative to follow creators and seek their advice when it comes to making purchases. And I think it's totally in the numbers that we see that. We also just released our LTK Creator Marketing Trends Report this week. And what we saw broadly is that where creators engage in community is changing. 74% of consumers now believe that social media has lost the social aspect. 74%. That's overwhelming. They understand this is not a place for social. This is a place to be entertained. This one's also interesting. 50% of Gen Z and millennials say they are now looking for community elsewhere, outside of social media platforms. So this isn't just a theory that I'm projecting. This isn't something that we're just seeing in our download numbers. People are self-reporting. Things have changed. They're looking to follow creators elsewhere. Stay tuned on more to say, because I will continue to keep you updated on what's happening in this space and the trends within the creator industry.
So I was the only female CEO, top 25 in market research my whole career. So you could imagine and it never held me back because I had my own company. And, one of the things I want to say about building something that doesn't exist is hard. It's hard. But I always said to myself, I need to be the first, the second, and the third. The first is always the creator, the innovator of something, and you usually fail. You make a lot of mistakes because there's so many things you don't know about. The second is the copycat. They copy everything you're doing, but they don't really know what's under the hood. They don't know why I deviated from this or that. And the third is the sweeper. We've already built the ecosystem. They get the funding and they get to pick up where you left off and they win. And so I always said to myself, as a street fighter, I need to be the first, the second, and the third, because no one is ever going to beat me at my own game. And I went to Nielsen for the million because I thought the brand name would be great. And we called it Real Research, REEL, because I started in the movie business. Even though I'm from the packaged good business, I thought I'm going to do the hardest thing possible, which is test trailers and commercials, because movies open and close in a weekend. And if I could build an ecosystem around testing for the movie business, which needs 24-hour feedback, I could compete in any category. So I did the hardest thing first. And when I needed $1 million, my husband and my father, may he rest in peace, said, we'll each give you $500,000 to start your company. And we didn't have it. My husband was still an intern or a fellow or something at the time, but they believed in me. And I turned them down for taking their money because I knew if I took their money, I wouldn't take risk. And to me, I never looked at failure like, oh, I'm going to fail, or what's my favorite failure. I took it as, how much risk am I willing to take? Because no risk, no reward. And if I didn't do it, I'd have regret. And I have a no regret policy. I never want to look back and say, I could have.
Ton of wisdom. So I didn't know that our conversation was going to take this path, but I do get a lot of questions about funding. And I think what you did with Trevor was absolutely genius. I don't know the ins and outs of how you promised him the million, but often early days, there's someone that you need to do a task. You know what you want, you're the brain behind it, but maybe you can't be the hands for whatever reason. In my case, that was very much true. I got on PowerPoint, I drew out what our website was going to look like. You touch here, it does this, and I had it all. And then I would sit with someone in the evenings and have them translate that to wireframes. So they're essentially a paid translator. We're not the only business who's done this, where you give people, stock in your company, for the potential future upside. But sometimes that future upside is quite a bit, actually. When it comes to we're in business 14 years, and you think about that person wasn't even involved past like pre-launch. And so I love what you did with Trevor, because it actually capped it. So it was great for him, but also capped it for you and for your outcome. The other thing that you mentioned that's worth digging into is actually taking funding from friends and family, which for many founders, it's impossible to not. And so we almost all start that way. But there is an even deeper emotional toll to having your mom's money, your dad's money, your aunt's money, your brother's money, and even your friend's money, because it can change the relationship, and they want certain things and have certain expectations, have maybe limits on their sophistication that another investor might not have. I've now had many projects where I have taken friends and family money. So I speak from experience there. It sounds like that you acted out of wisdom and not taking that, and it allowed you to swing for the fences a little bit more. So I loved you sharing that anecdote with us.
It's just, as you're talking about it right now, it brought me back to that moment where I needed that $1 million so badly. And it would have been very easy for me to take it from my dad and from my husband. And it was really hard to say no to it. But again, my heart said to me, I'm building something that doesn't exist. And because I didn't take my family money and I took Nielsen's money, I gave away a ridiculous amount of equity. I think I gave them 80%. For $1 million, I gave them 20% of the company.
By the way, Elon Musk did the same thing early on for like $20,000. So don't feel, bad. I think I've been listening to, the book, Isaacson's book about him. And I actually found so much solace in someone that I think is just probably one of the brightest minds of certainly our generation in this like modern history. And to hear the flubs that he had early on around fundraising, it's like even the geniuses can super screw this up.
Oh, I love these stories, by the way, which is what we should do a little thing together on, with all these amazing stories, because they're so insightful. And as a result, by the way, of me funding sort of myself, when I started the Female Quotient, I still fund myself. I don't take outside investment because I don't want a boss and I don't want a board. I've been there, done that, from being with some private equity people that are telling me how to manage and grow my business, when the same thing would have happened to my first review. I would look at them in the face and say, but you're wrong. That's not the way the business should go.
For many founders, when they're coming to me to ask about maybe their first round of funding or their first meaningful round of funding, I think the great context that they can learn from this is that it gives you, it's not just a new boss, it's a new job, because then you have to do all the work to prepare and answer. And there's a level at which there is like sharpening that occurs, and that can be very useful. But there's also a lot of time spent on the relationship that you could be spending on the business. It also forces timelines and decisions like you're describing that maybe weren't right for you personally, or you wouldn't have chosen personally. And I know many founders who either in their next project did self-fund or tell you that they would in their next project, because of the flexibility that it ultimately gives you when you don't have someone else making decisions for you. And I'll tell you, it'll come up with all kinds of decisions within your business. And a fair warning to just anyone raising. I remember when we did our Series A, and that was the first time I'd ever gone through a true fundraise. And I was absolutely shocked at some of the terms on that in that deck. I mean, that, of course, the paperwork is like a whole ream of paper thick. Honestly, I mean, being totally candid, I kind of just was like, oh, Baxter's and the lawyers will read it, and I'll like kind of hear like get the gist of it. And then when I sat down and started reading it, I was so offended by what was on the paper, because it basically said by owning like less than 10% of our business, it gave them rights over every decision: what banks we used, how many loans we took out, like what the comp was, how much we could travel, what our vacation days were, all this stuff. And I was like, wait, you mean that you want to own less than 10% of my company, but you want to make every decision and have override on all of that? Like, who knows what you would hold over me? So, I guess for founders out there, I want you to know that the investment industry is an industry, and press can be closely tied to it. I remember when we started our business that we often couldn't get press because they'd say, well, what's your valuation? Or like, who are your investors? And it was like, oh, myself and my father-in-law and my friend that I went to college with. And I was like, we don't know. We're just like, but these are the numbers we're putting up and it's great. And so it sort of feels like you're forced to take a round of funding just for legitimacy. But I'll tell you, legitimacy is not nearly as fun as making your own decisions. But, when you look at the scale of like Female Quotient, for example, so you guys have like 6 million on social, you're doing events all the time. You have 50,000 people that are attending your events annually, and that's like on a global scale. Tell me a little bit about, I want to hear like kind of the mix of community building here, but then also monetization. Like for you, what came first, or how did you think about getting the brand out?
Well, the name was simple for me, the Female Quotient, because first came IQ, the intelligence quotient, then came EQ, the emotional quotient, now comes FQ, the female quotient. When you add more women to any equation, there's a return on equality. That was the epiphany. And I was at Ipsos still at the time, running global innovation in 83 countries. And I've been in a boys' club my whole life. And another heartbeat moment, though, was after I sold to Ipsos, and now, it's a huge organization, incredibly global, enormous, and I had a lot of responsibility. I was one of 2 women on this public board. And we're sitting at one of the first meetings, and they're moving my employees around like chess pieces. This person goes here, this person goes here to integrate. And tears came down my eyes. And I said, that's not where any of those people go. And that's not going to happen. And I was pulled aside after the board meeting. Here I am, badass CEO with credibility, well known, blah, blah, blah. And they said, there's no room for emotion in the boardroom. Once again, your head says, agree with them. You're new in this company. You just got acquired. You're supposed to, But my heart said, no, not true. I said, these are people, and that's not where they belong. And I'm going to put them in the positions that they belong in. And the following week, I gave a speech to thousands. I was a global speaker, and my speech was bring emotion to the boardroom, exclamation point. And I probably put a heart under it. Who knows? Just to prove the point of how important, not the soft skills are. I call them the essential skills of leadership today, of compassion, empathy, compassion, purpose, impact, heart, human-centric leadership is in business. And that those are not soft skills. Those are, in my opinion, the most important skills of leaders today. And that was that. And so after my 5-year contract, because I committed after I sold to stay 5 years, I realized it was really, I wanted to create spaces where women at big industry conferences, because I was always, the girls' room, the ladies' room is always empty at these big conferences, and the men's room has lines waiting to get in them. It was time to create spaces at these conferences that women would support women. I never had that network of women supporting women. We were always, there was such a scarcity of jobs at the top. We would click our heels into each other's heads to push us down so others could get ahead, and it wasn't intentional. It was called life and necessity, basically. And so I wanted to create spaces for women to support women and to feel comfortable and have a safe space at these big boys club industry conferences. And so I started it while I was still at Ipsos, and it was called the Ipsos Girls Lounge. If there's a boys club, the opposite of boys girl, the opposite of clubs lounge. If there's a boys club, now there's a girls lounge. And I very intentionally used a little pink in the logo, not because I care about pink or want to be girly, no, because I wanted it to be a space that opened their arms, welcoming everyone. And I did hair and makeup in the center of the room. and powerful conversations. And at the beginning, a lot of women didn't like the name Girls Lounge. They're like, we're not girls, we're women. And I said, have you ever heard of men objectifying boys in the boys club? Or what about Go Girl, girlfriends, girl power? I said, a ladies' room, first of all, sounds like a bathroom. And a women's lounge sounds so goddamn boring. And a girls' lounge is kind of gives us permission to have fun and to break some rules and to be bold. And that's the name. And so kept that name. And then when it came time to my 5-year anniversary at Ipsos, I said to them, I want Ipsos to guarantee that the Girls Lounge is going to be in budgets, because I was doing my day job and then my after hours job to fund the Girls Lounge, which at the time probably was about $250,000, $400,000. Maybe I had done 2 or 3 lounges at that point, but small. Maybe it was 250,000. I don't remember. And my contract comes back, and then there's my contract, but nothing about the Girls Lounge. And I said, where's the Girls Lounge? They said, oh, well, we're going to support it, but we can't guarantee, who knows? And I said, listen, I am not resigning. I'm just not renewing my contract. And it was in that moment, another heartbeat moment, that I needed to take the Girls Lounge forward. And so I said to them, here's the deal. I'll take $500,000 from you and the rights to the Girls Lounge, and you will have a 2-year sponsorship, which is how the model of $250,000 for the year to sponsor all the collective events. And this was before DE&I. This was before everything. And I intentionally called it the business of equality. Not diversity, not women. I'm not in the women's space. I'm not in the diversity space, DE&I space. I'm in the business of equality. And when I started looking for partners and funding and all that to fund it, they all said, oh, you should talk to our HR department. I said, I'm not talking to HR. There was no DE&I. I said, I'm not talking to HR. I want CMOs and COOs and CEOs to make this their responsibility and be accountable. And so I turned down a lot of partnerships as a result of that. And then once the Girls Lounge started connecting, I did it at CES, which was our first one with the walking tour and all that. And I go into detail if you want. And then I did, I think, ANA and CAN, because I wanted to have ones that CMOs go to so that there would be this rhythm. Mm-hmm. I then got invited to the World Economic Forum. And that one was a dream come true. Wow. The Girls Lounge at the World Economic Forum. One space left, and I create unbadged space to democratize the system so everyone can come with a badge or without a badge. Another story. And I needed $250,000 to take this hole in the wall that no one wanted. And so I went to a financial company, to their women's organization, and they said, we love this, we'll fund you, but you have to change the name. We don't like Girls Lounge. I said, I'm not changing the name. That's the name. And it works. And so I funded myself to go, because who's not going to go? And the invitation was, we want you to come, but you might not feel welcome. That was the invitation to the World Economic Forum. Head says, don't go. Heart says you must. And I called my girlfriend from Bloomberg, Jackie Kelly. She was the COO of Bloomberg at the time. Now she's at IPG. And she said, of course I'm going to go with you. I said, you have to go with me. I don't want to go by myself, and it's scary. And then we brought 50 other women with us. And we had a slumber party at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland. And the rest is history. I mean, well, actually not. Second year, Jamie Dimon, CEO of JP Morgan, comes to the lounge. And he says, wow, you have balls. This is amazing. I will be here every year to speak. And we will be a partner. And he says, you can have any partner you want. And it wasn't Jamie talking, it was one of his people. But I credit him so much for our success in bringing people to the table. Like, I'm going to cry again because, and he said, you can have anyone you want to help be a partner because we're a partnership model, but the company that turns you down. I mean, come on.
That's incredible access. I want to take a quick break to show you one of my new favorite finds. If you're watching me on YouTube or any other video platform, then you can see that today I have on this little collar with my LTK sweatshirt. These collars come in a set of 2, and they are $12 for the set. There's a sharper corner one and a rounded corner one. The cool thing, I'm going to take this off. So again, if you're on video, come watch, check it out. If not, head to my LTK at Amber Vinsbox and you can see this video. But basically, this is a removable collar. You can totally take it off and just tuck it in. It's a really nice fabric, so it looks really high-end and expensive, but I think it's a way to just really elevate your look. That preppy style is in, and this is like one of the best finds that I found lately. So head to my LTK at Amber Vinsbox. I'll link you right to it. 2 of them for $12. Like, what a find. And you putting up your own money for something like that. How do you measure the impact of something like a Cannes or Davos?
For me, and once women started supporting women, as you said, we now have a community of over 6 million women across 30 industries, 100 countries. We have evolved our business from not just experiences, which is co-creation, collaboration, experimentation, having everyone have a big conversation together, to then the media business. Because when COVID hit, we couldn't do physical spaces and gathering anymore. And so you use the word pivot. We called it pivot with positivity. We pivoted in a heartbeat, and we went on Zoom and we started hosting dinner parties all over the globe to keep women connected to other virtual dinner parties. We didn't actually eat, but conversations globally. And I had no idea. I didn't do it for money because we weren't making any money at the time, that it would grow our community of conversation. I call it power of the pack. A woman alone has power. Collectively, we have impact. It was this incredible connecting experience, being able to use Zoom and connect women to one another that don't have access to come to a physical lounge. And so our community became really big and very global because we hosted all over the world. And I always say, when you are part of FQ, you get a hug, hello, and a yes.
Okay, tell me about the quips. I was saying I love the acronyms and kind of the cool phrases that you guys have kind of come up with. And to me, it's kind of part of your marketing and your personality. Will you share some of those with us?
Yeah, well, I say them on the fly, but I mean, power of the pack has been now solidified, but the Girls Lounge became the Equality Lounge once our community grew, and it was designed by women for everyone. Once women realized that they run the show, it's not my lounge, it's not yours, it's ours collectively. It's their home, it's their safe haven, it's their spot. They invite their meetings to the lounge, etc., and we give them the mic. When they bring their meetings, guess who the meetings are? They're with men. They end up in our lounge with these women. They run the show. And so once that happened, I took the girl out and put the Equality Lounge. So the Girls Lounge became the Equality Lounge under the umbrella of the Female Quotient, right? And so now we are in the experience business, in the media business, creating content that we push across our social channels and LinkedIn. I'm obsessed with for thought leadership, FYI. We're the top voice for women on LinkedIn and menopause for that matter, because I'm such an advocate of taboo topics. And then the third is our transformation business, where moving from CMOs that have been our greatest supporters and always will be our inner circle, also to include CEOs in the transformation, because the only way we will transform culture and create an equal workplace is if CEOs make this their responsibility, their priority, and their conscious choice. And so we started calling our lounges the Equality Lounge, the place for conscious leaders. I don't care if you're a man, I don't care if you're a woman. If you're in a position of power, use it to pull everyone up and to create the changes that we all need to see in the workplace today.
When we look to this kind of next generation of female leaders, what do you feel like they need to know about getting started?
It all starts with you believing in yourself. And, this imposter syndrome, where we all have this imposter syndrome of I'm not good enough, I'm not smart. Men and women have imposter syndrome. Men just ignore the voice and women let that voice get louder. And my girlfriend, Wendy Clark, says you just got to shut that bitch up in your head because it's not a real voice, right? I mean, you're talking to yourself. And so if you actually just looked in the mirror and said, I'm amazing, I'm bright, I've got amazing skills, and that I will compliment. Men think that too. They just don't acknowledge it. And so it all starts with you. If you don't believe in yourself, no one else will. We coined the phrase, you like our quips, confidence is beautiful. It's not how you look on the outside, it's how you feel on the inside. And just recently, we eliminated the word empowerment because we always talk, oh, female empowerment and female, empowered this, empowered that. Have you ever heard of male empowerment? Think about that. No. And so it's another implicit concept that we have ingrained in us that we need to wait for power to be given to us. If you look up empower in the dictionary, someone empowers you. But what if you empower yourself, right? You have the power within. So we call it in-powerment, INPOWERMENT, empowerment. We're all empowered. You have power. Use it. It doesn't matter how many people report to you. You're your own boss.
You described confidence earlier, and someone earlier today told me that anxiety is the opposite of confidence, and how you conquer anxiety is by having confidence. And I thought that was honestly really helpful. I scribbled it down. It's on my computer right now. The other thing I was thinking of, a leader who came into our organization several years ago and said, I will always do the job. You're hiring me because you believe in me, but I will be offline from this time to this time because I make my kids dinner, I feed them their dinner, and I put them to bed. And if I need to continue working after that, I will be back online and we can get on a call and we can do what we need to do. But basically don't plan to be able to reach me during these hours. And I was on her interview. She was a senior leader, and that was the first time I had seen that sort of boundary setting. And it was in the interview process. And I had such respect for it. I thought, why have I not done that? I'm struggling with how to both care for my kids and to be in the workplace. I have a calendar as well. I can block that time off as well and communicate that I will always get the job done, but it might not be in the time blocks that maybe you have typically worked or I have typically worked. So I guess a plus one that, setting those sort of boundaries totally works. And then the third thing I was going to mention, and I started out by saying that, I luckily have not been in a ton of situations where I've had to kind of navigate what's happening, in maybe male dominated fields or environments where, you're perceived for whatever reason to not be capable of doing the job. For anyone like looking for a company, maybe you're not interested in being a founder or being the leader, but maybe you want to be in a company where you can have a voice and step up. I think there's two things. One is look around and see the female leaders in that company. Are there female leaders in that company? And then spend some time with them. Are there people who feel like they can be mentors to you or that you would aspire to be like? And that could be another way for you to gauge, is this an organization that you should be a part of? And then I forgot the second part. But as far as, I guess I just wanted to get that in there because as far as overcoming, I get that question a lot of like, how do I deal with this?
You had so many pearls. I don't want to miss the threading of the pearls. So I just want to bring this home for 1 second, because first of all, it's not necessarily just more women or female leaders. It's about conscious leaders, which is why I say that, because there's plenty of women that are not supportive of other women also. And so, we also don't want to wait and watch until the percentages of women in senior positions get there to create the change. And that's why, I say it's conscious leaders. When we say male allies, we need male allies. Think about the implication of that. We're giving more power to men. Oh, I need you to rescue me. If the princess needs the prince to wake her up, no, they're leadership allies. We need leadership allies, right? Making it not about gender. And the other thing you said about the person that said, these are my hours and this is the non-negotiables. I call that life stage accommodation, because if you actually do that, you will have happy, fulfilled employees that will be loyal and stay longer as well. And it's getting conscious leaders to understand the importance of life stage accommodation and and by the way, there is no textbook that says you can't go to your kids' soccer game or hockey game or take them to the doctor. We used to sneak out Like, really? I mean, by the way, everyone should be practicing this life stage accommodation. So there's so many things that you talked about that are so incredibly priceless. So I didn't want to lose your
Oh,
little,
yeah.
your little
Well, and I remember the
pearls.
second thing. My first one was find a company that has leaders that you aspire to be like and can be mentors to you, or can set the type of tone that you know what you're walking into. Because there's plenty of, like you said, even all female environments that you can walk into that would be one of the most hellish places to work on the entire planet. So I think, understanding the culture of the place that you're walking into, and specifically how the leaders treat others, is really important. The other thing around just confidence, when I've been in rooms where, for example, Baxter and I will be there together and they only come up to Baxter and shake his hand. Or I've been in a room where, we sat down together and they only offered him a drink. It was, afternoon, whatever. It's like, no, it's like, Baxter, would you like something to drink? And it's like, would you like a beer? And then they don't talk to me and I'm like, I would also like a beer. And so I do it in a nice way, but it's that handshake, it's the drink that's offered, it's the eye contact that's only being made there as if I'm like a guest of the situation. And what I've found to do is, first of all, I specifically don't let myself get frustrated with these individuals, because I honestly think that they have cut themselves short of their opportunity in the world if this is the way they behave. So I have to like reframe this is a person who hasn't lived a their whole life. And then the other thing that I do is I assert myself as if I'm someone else as if I'm Baxter, or as if, whether that means saying, oh, you know what, I would love one of those as well. And just being, as cheery and as nice as I would ever be. Or, if it's in a conversation and I'm being ignored or I'm kind of being turned to, um, waiting until I have a polished, fully formed thought that adds value to the conversation, and asserting that. So like kind of refusing to be left out, and not in that like petty chirpy way, but in I'm going to like drop a zinger here that just shows my value, and I'm going to do it with a smile, and I'll do it every once in a while, because there is power in silence as well. But those are going to be kind of my two experiences as far as kind of like how to navigate rooms where you don't feel welcome or not being welcomed.
Ditto, completely agree. And always make sure you take the right seat at the table. Oftentimes when you're at that table, women are taking the chairs on the sidelines, or, sit at the table in the seat you want to sit in. Establish yourself, And I always do it, just like you, grace with grit. I never put anyone on the defense, I always say, people say, oh, that was unconscious. Well, if you use the word unconscious, you're conscious. So I will give people the benefit of the doubt and make them aware. And then they have a choice. Do something or don't. Right. And so those people that do that and make assumptions, what assumptions are the ones that are living in a little bubble. And so they just need to be aware that you're going to sign the paperwork. So they were talking to the wrong person. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And they
Right.
will subliminally or subconsciously or implicitly, or whatever word you want to use, understand she's got power, and a lot. Shame on me.
Shelley, you've been so incredible. I could continue to talk with you for hours. I'm dying to get into, even more about what you have also learned from other leaders, because I love what you've shared with us about yourself. I guess let's leave with one kind of tidbit. Like you've had these equality lounges, the girls lounge. You've had amazing speakers come in that are really running global companies. What would you say has been, I don't know, one of the most enlightening, or something that someone has shared that has really stuck with you or could be really edifying to our listeners?
Wow. Oh gosh. I have so many tidbits of knowledge from everyone. I always say you get bits and bytes of information from different people, which is why having one mentor or one, whatever you want to sponsor, whatever you want to call it, words mean nothing to me, is not the answer. It's spend 5 minutes with someone you don't know, and you're going to learn something that is priceless in your life. And that's why we don't have badges. No one wears a badge, because I don't want anyone to talk to someone because you're the CEO or the president or the vice president or with this company or that company. I think the greatest life learning comes from being curious, comes from listening to hear and picking up knowledge from all around you, top down, bottom up, and all around. So I am a walking collection of advice, not from just my lived experience, but from so many others' lived experience. And to me, that's the best advice you could get.
And tell us where we can follow along with you guys at the Female Quotient and then you yourself.
So we're on every digital channel. So Instagram, LinkedIn, probably TikTok. So Female Quotient and Shelley Zalis, both.
Thank you so much, Shelley. We appreciate you. I mentioned this in the opening of the episode, but I'm so grateful that my experience professionally has been unique to what Shelley's describing or other women have described their experience being, in that we are a female-founded company. We have, at least half women in leadership. Everybody's, point of view is valued at LTK. And I think we hire because we think that someone has something to add to the conversation. And so you're given a voice at the table. My experience in the workplace has truly been wonderful. And as we've brought in maybe, mishires that had a problem with, any type of person in leadership, whether it was for gender or otherwise, like they've been removed from our organization. Like there's a pruning that has to happen. You're not going to get it perfect every single time, but we want to create a space where people are valued, feel welcome, just because I think that's what you should be doing just as a person. Like it's not that it's a DEI initiative. It's just like, hey, to be a great human, you should treat people equally. And if they are valuable in your organization, you've brought them in, like use that value, like harness that value. I also think that we've come such a long way in the workforce, even since 2020, where so many jobs are remote or online. I mean, we at LTK have people working, I think, in over 40 states just in the US. Like we have people working globally, but I'm just like looking around. I mean, you can be literally anywhere. I mean, I'm hours from the nearest airport. Like I'm on Starlink in the middle of a ranch and I'm working for LTK. And so that gives me optionality. I mentioned that because it gives you optionality. So as you're looking for a place to spend your time professionally, I would encourage you to look at the people in leadership, look at the people that you'll be reporting to. What is their lifestyle? What are their morals and values? How do they spend their time? Like get to know about them personally, because that will filter through. Like their expectations and how they live their life and how they model their time, it will ultimately impact you. And that can be really helpful in you making a decision of where you want to spend your time, even in a remote work culture. So I feel like we today like people of all kinds, like you just have options and you don't have to tolerate working somewhere where you're not valued or appreciated or have an opportunity. And then, I look at other people, like there's a company, well, sometimes people will be like, oh, well, in my industry, it's male dominated. And I get that. There are a lot of industries that are that way. I think you can show up, provide value, persist through, not throw a tantrum when you're not, there's been situations where I've been in recently in new environments where candidly, the people there haven't ever seen like a strong female leader before. And so I just have to have empathy for that and say, well, they've never experienced it. They're not used to it. Maybe culturally, that's what was, they grew up in a different time. So I will be calm and patient and I will continue to lead with grace until they realize and have respect for me. And so that's one path. There's other paths. Like I remember the woman who started Elevest, she said, like, look, I looked around, I didn't see myself and I felt like I was being held back. So I created my own thing. I mean, that's always been my path is like, I want it. If I can't get it going through traditional, paths, then I make something myself. But I want to encourage everyone on this call that I don't think that things are working the same way that they used to. Like, I hope that that you have choice in your employment. I hope that you have choice in where and who you're spending your time with. But I would encourage everyone to manage it with grace and with empathy, because, like I said, in my recent experience where I could tell someone had not worked with a female leader before, I just gave it time. I kept showing up. I was kind and calm. I wasn't pejorative at all. I wasn't snarky at all. I didn't throw any punches. I just proved my value day after day after day. And ultimately, kind of your reputation is what you have to stand on. But if you feel like you're in a space where like that it's not overcomable, I'd encourage you to choose a new space. Don't spend, your life and time in that place. But I think we've come a long way because of maybe women like Shelley or by other role models that we've had over time or different kind of cultural movements. And so I want to be sure to share my perspective with you here because I think that there are multiple takes on what's happening. But I'm so grateful that I think my generation and all those, coming behind have just had a different experience and have the opportunity to have a different experience. And that's, again, regardless of your gender or any other sort of like diversity metric, in this kind of mosaic of all the ways that we can be different. I think it comes down to just morals, values, ethics, and how you treat people in general. So I hope that we're moving beyond this and that we can vote with our time, both professionally, personally, and then with our wallets and who and what we're patronizing and why. You can listen to More to Say on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And I'd love to hear from you. Share your comments and questions in the reviews section, or you can reach me at Amber Vinsbox on LTK, Instagram, or LinkedIn.